Who are you?
My name is Dmitry Orlov. I was born in Leningrad. My parents took me to the States when I was 12. I finished all of my education in the United States, had a career or several careers in the States, and then about a decade ago, my wife, my son, and I moved back to Russia. Before that, we spent about another decade living on a boat, a sailboat, sailing around the eastern seaboard of the United States. So it was a gradual transition of leaving the United States. Uh, First, it was just something on the horizon, and then it was something on the other side of the world. So we took it one step at a time, and it worked out rather well. Now we're living in Russia. Happy to be here. It's a great place.
Fascinating. I've met a lot of people that have spent their life in both countries since I started doing this. What is it about you that you think has put you into the spotlight? What is unique about you, would you say?
Well, a little over a decade ago, I wrote an article just on the spur of the moment. It was something that I was thinking about. I had a technical job. I was taking care of internet security for companies like Federal Express
Hmm.
um, at the time, basically managing rooms full of servers for them. And I wrote an article called Post-Soviet Lessons for a Post-American Century because I realized that the United States was moving in the same direction that the Soviet Union was before it collapsed. So, thinking through the entire process, I found out that the United States is much worse prepared for collapse than the Soviet Union was. The Soviet Union was inadvertently prepared to survive collapse and rebound, whereas that is not the case for the United States at all. And so I decided to, as a public service, to warn people as to
Hmm.
what I think is coming. And of course, everybody laughed at it and invited me to various conferences where I gave keynote addresses where everybody laughed. I was a dinner speaker because it was so entertaining to hear that a Russian talk about America collapsing like the Soviet Union. That was just like ridiculous but funny. And eventually they stopped inviting me because people stopped laughing and started crying.
Wow, that is amazing. So you were like a real life dinner for schmucks person like that movie. Very,
Yes.
very, very
Yeah.
interesting. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, your words carry weight because you were born in Russia, raised in America, became, a solid adult, and then chose to move back to Russia, of your own free will. You had either place you could live in. So most people are probably thinking at this point, this guy thinks Russia's the better place to be. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Basically, in the United States, we were living on a really elderly yacht that I spent a lot of time maintaining. Um, didn't really have the resources to send our kid to a reasonable private school, although even the private schools in the U.S. are kind of garbage at this point, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and really didn't have the ability to be middle class. Whereas we
Hmm.
moved back to Russia and we have an apartment in this historical center of St. Petersburg, which is beautiful. We have a house in the country. Our kid goes to a neighborhood school, which is excellent. Has all of the opportunities that he can avail himself of, depending on how smart he is and how hard he works, because it's pretty much a meritocracy in Russia, unlike the United States. And so it's a much better life. It's just a much better life. And on top of that, I happen to be Russian.
Hmm.
That's like that's my um, superpower, my survival trick for moving back to Russia. See,
Hmm.
if you're already Russian, then you already know the language, you already know the culture. You're not really distinguishable from the general population, and you just meld in, which is what
Right.
I did. Nobody at I'm going to tomorrow. I'm going to the parents' meeting at my kid's school. I bet that nobody at that meeting will even have the remotest idea that I might be an American. That's just like an unreasonable thing for anybody to think.
Right.
So I think I had a much easier time than your American expat, such as yourself, would have moving to Russia. There's just no
Right.
culture shock, nothing.
Well, I at least have a Russian wife, but yeah, I can only imagine what it's like for some people where the husband and wife, neither one are Russian, they move here with their children. How is it for your child? Because your child was born in America, correct?
Yes, but he lived on a boat first of all with us,
Hmm.
and he spent all the summers in Russia
Hmm.
with his grandmother, and my wife flew back every summer. So he was a Russian kid. He,
Okay.
he he spoke some English, but it wasn't interesting for him. He had this idea in his head that English is for stupid people who
Hmm.
don't know Russian.
Right.
You know, that was his childish take on the whole thing.
Right.
And now he studies English at school.
Well, I mean, it's a big deal, you know, if we think deeply about it, you know, choosing to move to a different country to raise your children, you know, it's not just a decision for yourself. You know, you're a person is changing, you know, generations of their family line to be, as far as how they're going to be, how they're going to be raised, what they're going to experience. You know, I mean, my family line left Russia in 1898, you know, and that was a big deal when they decided to move. You know, they had an effect on a couple of generations, and now I'm having an effect on my future generations or descendants, and you will as well. Um, so you wrote the book about stages of collapse.
I wrote a book called The Five Stages of Collapse, and before that I wrote a book which is probably the best that I ever managed to put out, called Reinventing Collapse, which was a direct comparison, category by category, of what the Soviet collapse looked like and what the American collapse will look like or looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
Those books are still in print. People are still reading them. They haven't aged a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more, taking into account what's been unfolding in the United States, it turns out that I was right on the money the entire time. So as a predictor, it seems that, you know, I inadvertently or was by sheer luck, you know, ended up as one of the better predictors of what's happening.
So I assume that you looked at different countries through history and you were able to categorize their collapse and then lay that onto what may happen to the US, to Russia, etc. And does each country have just one type of collapse, or it could have multiple of these collapses?
Well, what I did was I categorized collapse into stages.
Mm-hmm.
So that I could talk about each one separately. So I separated it into financial collapse, commercial collapse, political collapse, social collapse, and cultural collapse, so that I could talk about each one. And I specifically, because you write about what you know firsthand, not what you dig out from libraries. That's generally, you know, if you want to be a popular author, that's the way to go. If you want to be an academic, then you bury yourself in books and are never heard from again. But I basically wrote about what I experienced firsthand, because I was in Russia during the collapse of the Soviet Union. I spent several extended visits here. I had family here, friends, etc. It was quite engrossing and amazing to watch the events unfold. So that's what I wrote about. In terms of what I projected for the United States to happen, well, you know, I lived in the United States in a number of different places and could observe the overall general trends and projected those trends out, and it turned out that was relatively accurate.
Rolling?
Yes.
Did you like that clip? If so, click here. But if you love that clip, click here and watch the full video. Also remember to like, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, share before I disappear.